Rochelle Miller says her affair with Alan Tudge was completely consensual.
I think that it's really important now for me to be able to speak out and say that this behaviour wasn't okay.
One of the first voices to speak out in the story about the Canberra bubble and the treatment of women in federal parliament was Rochelle Miller. Many dismissed her appearance in the controversial program at the time because she was talking about the fallout from a consensual affair she had had with her then boss, the Minister for Cities, Alan Tudge.
Well, and there's also no suggestion here of anything unconsensual, I should stress. These things happen in Australia.
But these criticisms missed the essence of Miller's point, which is perhaps more subtle than a story of alleged abuse or harassment, but one which would be recognised by many women. It's the story of unequal power relationships and how, when a work affair goes bad, it is often the woman whose career suffers, while the man suffers no fallout at all. Miller spoke to Four Corners when she was still traumatised by the loss of her career and the fallout on her life that followed the end of her relationship with Tudge. But late last year, having received legal advice, she made a new and very specific allegation.
I'm fully aware that a year ago I said that my relationship with Minister Alan Tudge was a consensual relationship, but it's much more complicated than that.
Miller went on to allege the relationship was emotionally abusive and, in one instance, physically abusive. She alleged that, while the pair were travelling for work, Tudge had physically kicked her out of bed. Alan Tudge immediately responded by saying he completely and utterly denied Ms Miller's version of events. But
given the seriousness of these claims that have been made by Ms Miller, it is important that these matters be resolved fairly and expeditiously.
Dr Vivienne Thom, who conducted the inquiry into allegations of sexual harassment by the former High Court Justice Dyson Heydon, was appointed to conduct an inquiry into what the PM said were serious allegations involving a Cabinet Minister.
We, at first, were quite optimistic, given the announcement of Vivienne Thom and her, reputation as an impartial public servant. But we, upon negotiating the terms of reference, found that the process wasn't going to be fair or independent, and in fact it was probably going to disadvantage me. It bears all the hallmarks of the criticisms that are in both the Jenkins report and the Foster review.
Miller is referring to reports last year commissioned in the wake of the shocking allegations that ministerial staffer Brittany Higgins had been raped on a couch in the office of the then Defence Minister Linda Reynolds in 2019. Senior public servant Stephanie Foster was asked to report on how the Parliament handled serious complaints. Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins, whose landmark report on sexual harassment in the workplace had languished for 12 months without a government response before the Higgins controversy erupted, was asked to provide a second report specific to the culture at Parliament House.
Alarming details have emerged from the inquiry into the workplace culture in federal Parliament.
The report revealed that 4 in 10 women there have been sexually harassed.
Both reports had recommended independent and transparent processes to assist and investigate problems in the workplace. But Miller and her lawyers discovered that the terms of reference laid down to them by the Australian Government solicitor included an explicit instruction to Dr Thom that her investigation will not inquire into any conduct which may amount to a criminal offence. Any such matters should immediately be referred to the appropriate authorities, subject to Ms Miller's wishes.
So the inquiry straight away was hamstrung because it couldn't actually inquire into the very reason why the inquiry was called in the first place.
What's more, the government was trying to impose confidentiality obligations on Miller and an onerous timeframe.
The reason I did this in the first place was so that we could have an open and transparent debate about not only my experiences but experiences of women in Parliament, and yet they wanted to claim confidentiality over absolutely every piece of correspondence. One of the big sticking points was really the fact that they could not assure me that I would receive a copy of the report once the inquiry was finished.
Miller's lawyers received the letter setting out the terms of reference for the inquiry on December 14, with a declaration that the inquiry had to be completed by January 28.
In the Heydon inquiry, it took 6 months to negotiate and settle on those terms of reference, and they were expecting me to settle on the first draft in 2 weeks. So we began to be a little bit suspicious that perhaps this was more of a political problem-solving exercise than a genuine process to A, listen to me, and B, actually work to a resolution.
They also wanted to be very firm that the inquiry be wound up on the 28th of January.
Yes, yes.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think it's rather obvious. I mean, it's perfect timing, 28th of January. It gives them then a week to reinstate Minister Tudge, put him back on the front bench, all in time for the first sitting week of Parliament.
And in her interview with 7:30, Miller has this bombshell too. Before she had appeared on the Four Corners program, she had submitted a formal complaint to the Department of Finance, which is technically responsible for ministerial staff, in which she made a number of allegations about her treatment, from bullying to sexual assault, by others in Parliament House over the course of her 10-year career.
There were a few other incidents that happened that I wanted to also raise.
So when you say this contained a whole series of allegations, they weren't all of sort of a sexual assault nature, but just...
No, bullying, harassment, gaslighting.
Looking at what's happened since, what's your feeling, first of all, just thinking about all the various inquiries and reviews, have there been any that have emerged that you think have dealt with any of these issues satisfactorily? I
believe the Jenkins report satisfies everything that I would wish for to change in Parliament, and which is why obviously I came up here in December and said they all need to be implemented, all of the recommendations, not just a few, but all of them, and I think they certainly would have helped me. I still think that there's that need for the change in the legislation because a parliamentarian can still sack a staffer for just a loss of confidence, and that is, different to every other employee in the country.
Miller plans to continue with the mediation and settlement processes that have been underway since the end of 2020 in the hopes of closure and compensation for the loss of a career she loved. But she does not believe there will be any satisfaction for her from the Thom inquiry.
I've no doubt that Vivienne Thom will stick to her deadline of 28th of January, and that report is going to say what we all know it's going to say, which is that the outcome is inconclusive.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.